Hello, and welcome to my channel. Try This as a series breaking down a certain game or playstyle of a game. Today we're going to be talking Commander and breaking down Duke Ulder Ravengard. The video is broken down into chapters which you can find in the description or in the timeline. I'll be briefly covering Duke Ulder and then cover some win conditions and how we'll get there. I'll talk about some mana base and card draw strategies. I'll discuss other synergistic cards in the deck and why I think they'll help. I'll cover some other cards I cut from my example list, why they didn't fit my list but they might fit yours. And finally, I'll be moving on to some budget suggestions for the deck. If you enjoy this content, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It really helps other viewers discover the content I produce and is a great way to show support. With that said, let's dive in. Duke Ulder is a 5/5 human noble soldier that costs 4 red-white. He has, at the beginning of combat on your turn, another target creature you control gains haste and Myriad until end of turn. Myriad says, whenever it attacks, for each opponent other than defending player, you may create a token that's a copy of that creature that's tapped and attacking that player or a planeswalker they control. Exile the tokens at the end of combat. I think the Duke is an interesting commander, as Myriad isn't an ability explored often in Magic. We have a couple infamous cards like Blade of Selves, but having an ability on a commander to give anything Myriad is an interesting design that was very fun to build around. I think Ulder naturally wants to be an enter the battlefield tribal deck. Creating so many token copies of things naturally plays into this theme. Our commander also gives the targeted creature haste, which when combined with Myriad can make for some explosive turns. A good example is Hellkite Tyrant. It is kind of crazy that we could potentially scoop up the entire board's artifacts with this card the turn it comes down. However, a major drawback of Myriad is that it relies on how many opponents we have. We need to be aggressive to get our opponent's life as low as possible as fast as possible. We could stall out if we're in a 1v1 situation, so we need to try and burn them as much as we can while we have all of our opponents. In testing my example deck, I found Ulder to be a huge threat in early game. However, he struggled a bit to close them out as opponents were removed. But all the same, there is a lot of ETB effects in this deck that could be very dangerous and finish off that last opponent. We're going to focus on duplicating dangerous creatures for insane value and potentially abuse enter the battlefield triggers to bring us to victory. We're going to focus on non-legendary creatures to target with Myriad, as we need to sacrifice the copies when they enter if they're legendary. We can get around this with cards like Mirror Gallery and Mirror Box. However, I didn't think it was worth relying on those cards for this deck. There are plenty of good abilities on non-legendary cards we can abuse. Some good examples are Dockside Extortionist and Archangel of Thune. We can repetitively trigger Dockside with Myriad. Also, if the Archangel has Myriad, every copy sees each other's trigger before the tokens get exiled. That's 16 +1/+1 counters on each creature we control if all of them swing and live through combat. Those are just some examples, and I'll discuss more in the high synergy card section, but the main plan is to use Myriad to abuse ETB effects and other nasty creatures we have. Going along with both strategies are cards like Terror of the Peaks, Perforos, and Impact Tremors. All 3 cards go along with the ETB theme and synergize with all the tokens we'll make from the Myriad triggers. They should really chew through our opponent's life totals, especially if we get cards like Fiery Emancipation and Panharmonicon to triple up the damage or double up the triggers. With Myriad, any combination of these cards can present a serious threat to our opponents. Our commander and creatures are pretty expensive to cast, so we're running an aggressive ramp package to help them out. Starting off, I have my auto includes in Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, and Thematic Compass. The Compass can ensure our land drops in the early game while giving us a strictly better Mazavith later on to protect us from pesky creatures. I'm also running Smothering Tithe and the previously mentioned Dockside Extortionist. These are some pretty powerful cards, and like I mentioned, we can even use Myriad on the Dockside for some seriously explosive mana production. On the calmer side of the ramp package is Gold Mirror, Ornithopter of Paradise, and Iron Mirror as some cheap mana dorks we can get out in early game. Solemn Simulacrum, Knight of the White Orchid, and Wayfarer's Bauble can fetch us some lands. The Sad Robot and the Knight are also great Myriad targets to get us some additional lands from our library. I'm also running Dowsing Dagger, which flips into a land that taps for 3 mana. There are quite a few flyers in this deck, so we should find an opportunity to swing out with this equipment. I've always found this equipment pretty reliable, especially in decks that have lots of evasion abilities. To wrap it up is Talisman of Conviction, Sword of the Animist, and Thran Dynamo. The sword can repetitively get us basics throughout the game as well. Starting off, I have Esper Sentinel, Spirited Companion, and Sky Scanner as some creatures to draw us cards. The Companion and Sky Scanner are 2 great targets for Myriad, as the token copies can trigger our finishing effects while also drawing us additional cards. I'm running Court of Grace to introduce Monarch and generate some creatures for us. Since our creatures attack every opponent, we'll always be putting pressure on whomever steals Monarch from us. Duke Ulder can also give the tokens produced haste and Myriad to swing out right away. Going along with the court is Emberwild Captain and Skyline Despot. Since they give us Monarch when they enter the battlefield, we can steal Monarch back from our opponents with Myriad even if the creatures don't connect. I'm also running War Room and Gaia Reach Sanitarium for added card draw. We should be set with the previously mentioned cards, but these lands are great includes to help if we find ourselves in a pinch. Finally, Combustible Gearhulk can also get us some card draw. Our opponents could risk all the damage, but with Myriad on this creature, we could target one opponent with every effect. I think most opponents would probably let you get some draws because the potential burst damage they could take from this effect is substantial. Starting off, I'm running Sundial of the Infinite and Reconnaissance as two cards we're going to use to abuse a very nuanced rule interaction in Magic. There is actually a small window of opportunity after combat damage is dealt and before the end of combat where we can activate abilities and cast spells at instant speed. Reconnaissance is known for abusing this as a way to give creatures pseudo-vigilance. Basically, you untap them and remove them from combat after damage is dealt. It is a really powerful card for this reason, and in addition, we can also save our creatures from combat tricks. Also, if we don't have any good attacks for our creatures, we can save whatever creature has Myriad while the copies go in for the attack. This way we can keep the original creature from dying while still making copies of it. We can also abuse the Sundial in a similar fashion. Since Myriad exiles tokens at the end of combat, we can end the turn after damage is dealt but before combat ends to save the tokens created. This is very powerful with our normal cards, but is especially powerful with our cards that already have Myriad. As those tokens will also have Myriad, the next time we attack will be exponentially increasing the number of creatures we have by however many opponents we have. I'm running some additional Myriad creatures in Battle Angels of Tyr, Elturel Survivors, and Herald of the Host. Since our commander can only target one creature at a time, I thought adding some additional Myriad effects would fit the theme in our ETB strategy. Battle Angels of Tyr are especially powerful as we're more than likely going to get one of these effects and all are useful at any point in the game. To help give creatures Myriad, I'm also running Blade of Selves and Legion Loyalty, which is a new enchantment that gives all of our creatures Myriad. Honestly, I feel like 8 mana is a lot for this effect, especially since it scales down with the game as opponents are removed. However, I really wanted to include it in this deck as it fits Ulder's theme and it could enable our ETB theme also. An important note about our commander and these additional Myriad abilities, they can actually stack up, producing even more tokens on attack. Myriad as a keyword is just shorthand for a very wordy ability, and multiple instances of Myriad can trigger multiple instances of that ability. This is similar to how some cards have multiple instances of Cascade, so our commander can double up cards like Battle Angels of Tyr or whatever Blade of Selves is attached to. This can help mitigate the tokens lost when opponents start being removed from the game. I'm running Lithoform Engine and Strionic Resonator to double up Ulder's Trigger or our other ETB effects. Alongside them is the previously mentioned Panharmonicon to also double up these triggers. These cards should be very versatile and provide plenty of value because of the high number of ETB effects we have in the list. To help out all the burn effects I've already mentioned so far, I'm also running Inferno Titan. This card and other creatures like Terror of the Peak synergize very well with cards like Basilisk Collar and the Myriad ability. Since the creatures are the ones doing the damage, having a lifelink equipment is a nice include to help pad up our life total. Also, Death Touch helps remove some of our opponent's creatures. For some removal effects, we can abuse cards like Cavalier of Dawn, Dwagger Hedgemage, and Steel Hellkite to blow up our opponent's permanents. Hellkite is nice because we can use that ability on the Myriad tokens to take out something from each opponent should they connect. Karmic Guide and Sun Titan can recur some of our stuff should anything blow up at some point in the game. Myriad on these creatures can ensure we continue to recur things from our graveyard. I'm running some common protection effects and Swiftfoot Boots and Lightning Greaves. The Greaves are just for our commander. We need to target whatever creature we want to give Myriad, so keep that in mind when using this equipment. I'm also running Boros Charm, Flawless Maneuver, and Teferi's Protection to protect our board state. Our stuff is pretty expensive and difficult to recur normally, so we want to make sure they survive. I'm running some other copy effects in Helm of the Host. Honestly, I'm just kind of a fanboy for this artifact. It's a pretty expensive effect, and we could run something else that synergizes better with the deck. However, it's one way to copy Perforos and some other dangerous creatures to keep them around if we don't have the Sundial out yet. The cutting room floor is where I talk about some cards around or over $10 at the time of recording that I cut from my list for various reasons but are worth mentioning the run. Though these cards didn't find a home in my list, they might find a home in yours. Starting off are some solid ramp cards in Curse of Opulence, Land Tax, and Weathered Wayfarer. The Curse normally finds a home in red decks that don't have access to a lot of ramp normally. In this deck, the Myriad tokens don't actually trigger it, so we'd have to attack right into whoever is cursed. Land tax only puts basics into our hand, so I felt it was a bit slow when this deck wants to be aggressive. I felt the same for the Wayfarer, who also fetches lands in the hand. Abusing ETB effects like Solemn Simulacrum and Dockside was much more reliable. Also, abusing ETB draw effects almost ensured my land drops anyway. For added ramp is Sword of Hearth and Home. This sword not only fetches lands for us untapped, but it can flicker our creatures for added ETB effects. I ended up cutting this card because it gives the creature protection from white. This would counter Ulder's ability since it has to target the creature. We can use Myriad for additional ETB triggers, and Sword of the Animist has replaced this sword for the ramp in my list. Next are some combo creatures. We have Aurelia the War Leader, who only needs Helm of the Host to get infinite combat steps. We can also use our commander's ability to give the token Myriad, which speeds up the process but really isn't needed for the combo. Next is Kiki-Jiki, which would need some additional cards like Fellow Dark Guardian or Restoration Angel. Either would essentially make infinite creatures to attack with since the Goblin gives them haste. We could also run Goblin Bombardment since we already have Karmic Guide to ping our opponents to death. Basically, we copy Karmic Guide, maintain priority to sack Kiki-Jiki, then revive the Goblin with the Karmic Guide trigger. I suggest these combos because I think there's a real possibility the deck could stall out once we're in a 1v1 situation. Our commander's ability is basically useless outside of haste at that point. Our other Myriad creatures and effects would also be mostly useless. If you want to play into the combo theme more, Godo Bandit Warlord combos with Helm of the Host similar to Aurelia. Again, we can use our commander to give the token Myriad to speed up the process. Godo can actually tutor for the Helm to potentially kick off the combo on the same turn he enters. Since he doesn't have flying and is a 3/3, this might not threaten the win on its own. To help this out, you could add an additional card in Shielded by Faith. You can move the aura to the new Godo and eventually beat down whatever is blocking him. If that creature has Indestructible though, then this plan might not work out. I think Aurelia is a bit more reliable to finish the game as she has flying, but Godo is probably more consistent since he can tutor out the Helm. This combo was actually a suggestion by a viewer for another deck as a potential way to close out the game. I think it fits the theme of this deck pretty well and it would be a good budget include. Thanks for the tip. Playing into Monarch some more, you can include Court of Ire. This court will help us burn down our opponents to close out the game. With the other Monarch cards we're already running, this could also still back Monarch for us. Anger can give all of our creatures haste if it's in the graveyard. I originally cut it because Ulder can give at least one thing haste per combat. I didn't think I needed more of that, but to apply more pressure on our opponents, Anger is probably worth considering. If you need some more ramp in your deck, then Palladium Mirror, Hedron Crawler, and Scuttlemutt are some good budget options. There are many artifact mana dorks out there to fit with any color combination. For some additional land fetching, I'd recommend Burnished Heart, which is a great budget creature. If you feel like your deck doesn't have enough ramp or relies too heavily on mana rocks or dorks, then this would be a good include for you. I don't normally break down budget lands or other mana rocks. There are so many and honestly the options are just endless. With a little bit of looking around, you can find whatever suits your needs and preferences. I always shout out managathering.com for this reason. It has an organized list of lands and rocks that are easy to navigate. It is an incredible resource when deck building in colors you're not really familiar with. I didn't cover every card in this deck or every suggestion I have for Ulder, so if you'd like to see the rest, check out the deck list in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider clicking the like button and subscribing to the channel. Comment on cards you think synergize well with this commander, and if you have any suggestions for commanders to build around in the future. Thank you so much for watching, good luck, and have fun.